This podcast is powered by Choircast, the audio and podcast division of Choir Publishing. Hello, journeyers. Welcome back to Honoring the Journey, where we talk about people's lives and their faith journeys, and we get to celebrate and honor that journey, which can sometimes be a little painful, a little scary, and also pretty freaking amazing. So today I am so excited to introduce you to my very new friend who I have so much in common with, and yet we're very different, and I can't wait to talk about that. Mattie Jo Cowsert. She actually wrote a book through Choir Publishing. Choircast is the sponsor of this podcast, so you probably hear about them every time you push play. And we love Choircast and Choir Publishing. She had this book released last year, and I think it did pretty well. Mattie Jo, welcome to Honoring the Journey.
Thank you for having me, Leslie. I'm really excited to be here. I want to apologize up front. I do have some sort of upper
We all do.
respiratory thing.
Same.
And so
Yes.
if I have to stop and cough, hopefully
Nope.
we can edit that out.
Totally.
But yeah, happy
Oh,
to be
I'm
here.
so
Also,
excited.
can you hear my heater? I have a
I
space
do
heater.
not. I
Okay,
do
great.
not. My little motor vacuum thing,
Mhm.
like the one is going downstairs. I got it for
Yes.
Christmas, and I'm like, oh, I hope I don't hear that. But
Yeah, the robot
anyway,
vacuum. Yeah.
yeah, all the things we have just admitted it all. We are imperfect,
Mhm.
and today may be imperfect. However, it will not be not exciting because I can tell you just from listening to Mattie Jo, by seeing some of her book and getting to know her a little bit before she came on the show, I was like, she's going to be talking about her journey, which I'm super excited about, but she's also going to be talking about purity culture, which is something I haven't really tackled a whole lot. I've had some millennials on here, of course. I've had my daughter. I've had a couple of people on the show that have talked about purity culture, in their story, but not really gotten into a whole lot of detail about it. So I really am
Mhm.
excited to go there today with you, Mattie Jo.
Yeah.
So you grew up, let's go from the very
Mhm.
beginning. This is what we
Okay.
do in Honoring the Journey, is we literally just honor your journey. You tell me your
Great.
story from as early as you want to go to as late as you want to go. You tell me all the good things, the bad things, whatever you feel like sharing with my listeners. We're all sort of like on the edge of our seats, just waiting to hear. So tell me
Mhm.
about growing up in your house, Mattie Jo.
Yeah, so I say in the book, this shit is literally in my DNA in terms of evangelicalism because
Yes.
I've since I think it's like my great great grandfather came over from Germany. And then both of my great grandfathers were Baptist preachers. Both of my grandfathers were Baptist preachers. My parents met at a Baptist summer camp, ended up going to Baptist college together. And so that's why I say, like, this. I will be influenced by the evangelicals forever and ever, amen.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
so for some clarity, because I figured out that, like, as I tell my story to different audiences, some people don't know, like, why Baptists are evangelicals, but, like, not
I
all
was going to
evangelicals are
say,
Baptists. Yeah.
so when you say Baptist, as
Mhm.
somebody who has been taught to classify and
Totally.
label everyone in evangelicalism, so what kind of Baptist are we talking? Are we
Yeah.
talking fundamentalist, independent? Are we talking Southern?
Yeah. I know it's important because they
It
are
is.
as varied as, kinds of, like, injections you can get into your face at this point. So it's like we were General Baptist, which is
Okay.
an actual denomination.
I've never heard of
It's
this. I
not
can't believe
right.
it.
It's a very small sect, but it's like, if you see Second Baptist Church, First Baptist Church, that is different from a General Baptist Church. I don't know exactly what the differentiation is, other than something to do with, like, once saved, always saved. Like,
Yes.
if
Yeah.
you say the Lord's Prayer, even if you have deconstructed and you
Yes.
espouse with your lips that you are no longer a Christian, can you fall out of the grace of God? I
Mm.
think that's where the break happened, but who cares? It's dumb.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so my dad, interestingly enough, my dad was also a Methodist pastor at one point. I wasn't around for that leg of his ministry tour, but he was a Methodist pastor at one point. And yeah, so I talk about this in the book. It's like, I grew up with the church, just a huge part of my life. It was a massive part of my childhood. But I wouldn't say that I like started to really care about my identity as a Christian until like junior high. Because my dad became a community pastor, which he was just on staff. He was not the lead pastor of a pretty progressive church,
Ooh,
which
fancy.
means they sing Hillsong United songs and like,
Yes.
do the curriculum from is it Saddleback
Saddleback,
Church?
yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm,
Saddleback.
mhm.
It's all it means, right? I mean, they are still not like queer affirming, or if you're liberal, you're definitely like not in the club. But that's what it meant to be progressive, right? We didn't sing hymns, we didn't have liturgy, there was no real dress code other than modest is hottest.
Yeah.
It was very much in the fold of like cool Christians. And I also grew up
Oh,
in Branson, Missouri. So I don't know if you're familiar with Branson.
mhm.
It's a
Yep.
kitschy little place. It's tourists abound, but it is also the home of Kanakuk camps. And if you guys don't know Kanakuk camps, they are really popular Christian sports camps.
Mhm.
If you give them a Google, they have been in the news a lot in recent years due to a lot of predatory and like pedophilia.
Mm,
Not unlike pretty powerful
right.
religious organizations. But so the canna culture was really woven in everywhere as well. Like everybody was a Christian, and even if you didn't go to church on Sunday or whatever, you would never ever say you weren't a Christian, right? Everybody was
Right.
Christian.
Well, then
And
you get to the top of the prayer list. You don't want that.
right, and you don't
Yeah.
want that. Yeah. I mean, even the Jews in our area were Jews for Jesus, right?
Oh, of
Like it's
course,
just,
yeah.
um so that's kind of I grew up where it was like kind of the trendy thing to do. It was a cool thing to have the purity rings, to not drink, to not party. I to not have boyfriends, like unless you were gonna you had to date to marry. So therefore, if you were going to date someone, that had to be someone that you knew for sure was a marriage candidate. And we can talk
Mhm.
about all the way, we can extrapolate all the ways in which that manifests. And so yeah, it was just I don't know if I'm giving clear bullet points here, but
No,
like
you
even
are.
in college, I
It was
was in
life.
ministry groups. It was life.
It's
I was
all
in
you
ministry
knew.
groups. I went on mission trips, when other seniors were going to like Daytona Beach, Florida for their senior trips, because that's what we do in the Midwest.
Yeah.
None of this Galapagos bullshit that all the kids I nanny here do. But
Like, how do
anyway,
you
we
afford that anyway?
I rich people, which we can
Yes.
also talk about.
We're gonna get into that too.
Right. But I went on a mission trip to Honduras, and we were laying concrete for orphanages, and I went to Indonesia on mission trips, and I was like most of my international travel before I was an independent adult was on mission trips. So and I was with a guy in college, and we were definitely attempting to save ourselves until marriage, which we did succeed, depending on, what counts as saving yourself, but in terms of P and the V, that didn't
Yeah.
happen. And so yeah, it was just everything. It was every
Wow.
part of my identity. So you can imagine when I went to New York City at 22 to become an actor instead of becoming a wife, it was I really thought I could just like take my faith and my life and just transport it to New York City. Like, duh, it's who I am, it's everything
Yeah.
about me. What I never even considered, never, I was fully blindsided that just by existing in a different culture, I would be accosted involuntarily, which is a bit redundant because that's what it means to be accosted, but you know what I mean. Like with all of the ways in which this belief system I thought was faith was actually all fear. And it was all
Yeah.
social control.
Yep.
And you can see why, you can see really quickly why insularity, is that a word?
Mhm.
Insularity within
Mhm.
religious
Yeah.
communities is so important and so perpetrated is because it falls apart, like the whole system ravels real quickly if you step out.
100%.
Yeah.
Which is why I think so many parents, myself included, as I was
Mhm.
raising my precious little millennials,
Mhm.
as I'm raising these kids through the exact culture you just described,
Mhm.
my fear was that they would go to a liberal college and get
Mhm.
indoctrinated. And now I'm like, holy
And
crap,
they would.
they no,
Wouldn't
they
you
would get
know that's what happens?
they would get unindoctrinated. That's the thing. Like,
Right.
that's where we
Right.
miss it. We think they're doing something that's so wrong. And the truth is, no, they're just helping our kids see how big and beautiful this world is, and how
Mhm.
diverse and how amazing. And so all of a sudden, it's like you said, like that foundation that was built on fear starts to
Mhm.
crack. And you're like,
Mhm.
wait, what if I didn't have to be afraid? You know?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so you're faced with this. Okay, wait, I have to ask, because deconstruction for me was so freaking scary and hard and difficult. And this is where I think we're a little different. I
Mhm.
think you were like, hell yeah, let's go. And I
What
love
a
that.
relief.
Yeah, I know, and I was like, what's happening to me? So like, tell me what was going on in your mind as you're like being confronted with this new reality, like, and what changed you?
Yeah, it's so hard to explain because it's like it was gradual and rapid all at once.
Mm,
Like, the behavior changed way before the beliefs, which is what I
right.
kind of break apart in the book. Like, I didn't know how to formulate a belief on my own because I had been taught not to trust myself.
Mm,
So then how do the worst thing to be as a Christian is not a Satan worshiper, it's to be of the flesh, right?
yes.
Like
Oh, yeah.
it's to or to be a lukewarm Christian, or it's evil is really your own human desires. Anything that is not of the Lord, it doesn't have
Mm,
to look like murdering, right?
exactly.
So I didn't know how to listen to myself. I didn't, let alone trust myself.
Well,
I had
no.
no confidence. Like, I was asked this in another interview, like, how do you think purity culture really showed up the most in your life? And I was like, I think just this lack of self-trust, which led to horrible self-esteem. And then if you have horrible self-esteem and you don't trust yourself, well, then you can't make decisions that are in your best interest. And
Mm,
then that's how you end up in abusive relationships. And, and never mind all of your identity being um eh, what's the word I'm looking for?
shattered.
Yeah, well, your identity is like pedestalized, or being in a relationship is pedestalized. So if
Right.
everything in your life is about being in a relationship, in a straight relationship, then again, you're not even really asking yourself, what do I want? It's just like, get in a relationship at all
Uh,
costs.
yeah.
So, anyways, like, I was still existing in this space of these like deep cellular beliefs around lack of self-trust, thinking I was a piece of shit, like, if all
Mhm.
you hear your whole life is you're a dirty pile of rags with the "I'm nothing without you, oh Lord," then you have no self-esteem. And so I was operating at probably, I say this in the book, like, probably on the outside, nobody could tell. In fact, my roommate, who I talk about a lot in the book, Colin, when he read the book, he apologized to me. He was like, "I feel like I was so cavalier about a lot of the things that you were coming to me about, and I had no idea what you were going through internally." I was like, "Well, how would you? I was a great
Yeah.
actress." And
You learn how to show up
yeah,
as not authentic, as somebody
yeah,
who the people need to see in order to feel
mhm,
comfortable in a room. You
yeah,
you literally put the mask on, and honestly, it feels like home. It feels
yeah,
like that's the only way you're safe, is to
yeah,
put on airs. And you said
right.
something, I want to kind of go back to this, because this is a
Yeah,
big
yeah,
line that I hear a lot in this particular sense. You asked yourself, what do I want? Or you're afraid to ask yourself, what do I want? Because I think a lot of times that we're taught in evangelical spaces, and maybe even others, that it doesn't matter what you want.
it doesn't.
What does
Does
Jesus want? What does
They
God
they say
want?
that there's a lot about what we learn that is covert, but
Yeah.
that message is very overt.
Overt.
What
Yes.
you want does not.
Doesn't matter, because you're a sinner and you're disgusting, and God can't even look at you unless Jesus covers you with the veil. And then
Mhm.
when he looks at you, he only sees Jesus. So really, you're a piece of trash. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not what they say,
Mhm.
but it is what they're saying.
Yeah.
And that is what settled into my heart. And I'm sure that
Yeah.
settled into yours.
And so, yeah, and so for a long time, it's like, I say, like, I was having sex and I was hooking up, but I certainly wasn't having good sex, and I was disassociated for a lot of it. I was making really poor decisions. I was drinking a lot, which is something I could talk about. Like, a lot of people think it's this binary of like hookup culture and purity culture. There's a lot that's wrong with hookup culture,
Oh,
namely that a
100%.
lot of times women are drunk for sex, men are drunk for sex, and the awful things that can happen because of that. So yeah, I was just I was having a lot of fun. That's the thing. It's like I was having a lot of fun with my girlfriends. I was having all of these new experiences. It's like I was going to I had a friend who's like a Broadway producer. And so I was going to all these opening night shows with him and these Broadway shows and meeting celebrities. I was a musical theater major in college. So these people were like celebrities to me. And
Wow.
I worked in the theater district. So I was seeing Broadway stars all the time. Like I was having this really exciting life. And I felt so grateful that I didn't just get evangelical married. I was like, thank
Mm,
God I ended up here. At the same time,
that's what I was going to say.
feeling so bad about myself
And
because
guilty, probably.
and guilty and
Yeah.
shame filled and literally no direction, just kind of like, I mean, everything in my life, I talk about this in the book, everything in my life at that point was a reaction. Nothing was like grounded and intentional.
Mm.
So, yeah, it was really tough because I was so grateful for the life that I had in New York, but also felt like I was being punished with singlehood and lack of success in dating in New York because I was impure and because I hadn't just like, gotten evangelical married.
Oh,
Yeah,
so hard.
it was and then I also was not doing very well in auditions again because like I had no self-esteem. So and then I blamed again everything in my life was reactionary and also everything was in this perspective of reward and punishment. I didn't feel like I had any say in my life, any autonomy. So I just thought, oh, well, if I'm not doing well in auditions, it's because I'm having sex before marriage and God is punishing me.
Oh, yeah. There
Like it,
yes, because that's what you're told. Like,
and
when you
so I
make these
felt very
decisions,
helpless.
bad things are going to happen in your life. When you make these decisions, everything will go great because God will
Mhm.
bless you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and see, and it's funny because I raised my kids in that same culture and,
Mhm.
the writing to your husband letters, my daughter did all
Mhm.
that. She saved
Mhm.
herself from marriage, ended up in a
Mhm.
marriage that did not work. After 3
Mhm.
years, it was over. And she did everything right.
Yeah.
And then so, like, she went the opposite direction, Mattie Jo. She did
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
all, like, to the T, and it
Mhm.
completely exploded in her
Yeah, I
face.
think that's a
And
lot of people's
yes.
experience.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's like you kind of chose to go in a different direction, and I think as a result, we're able to probably really experience what it's
Mhm.
like to, I don't know, be able to have autonomy.
Yeah, and I
What's
didn't know
that?
that that was a choice. Again, that's like
Yeah.
later I talk about this in the book later on. I realized like, oh, the thoughts that I have, the way that I speak to myself directly informs how things happen in my life. And
Yeah.
so if and then so I was able to start like excavating if this is what's happening, what is the thought behind it? What is the message I'm sending myself? Is my lack of success in dating in New York City just because I'm being punished, or is it the result of a lot of decisions I'm making to give attention to men who treat me like garbage, because I have no self-esteem.
Yeah.
It's like and it's like that's how I started to learn those tools because I
Mhm.
did have a say in my life. But I didn't know that because you're not taught that in
Mhm.
evangelicalism. Everything is reward and punishment. Everything is what the Lord's will is. You don't have a say. And
Yeah.
so, and in fact, if you do follow your desires, that is sinful.
It's
So,
idolatry. You're
yeah,
doing That's what they tell
yeah,
you is that, like,
yeah,
if you do what you wanna do, if you ask yourself, "What do I want?" You are worshiping yourself.
yes,
And
yeah,
so there, you're like, "Oh, I can't do that. I can't do that."
yeah, yeah,
Oh, girl, how did
yeah,
you do this in New York City, surrounded by, like,
yeah,
these people who were living these like, and what did your parents have to say? Like, you come from this very Christian
yeah,
background. Were they a little understanding about this, or were they kinda, like, freaked out?
yeah. It started with again, I talk about this in depth in the book, kind of like the way that it started to
Mhm.
unravel for me. And I actually got pretty I got pretty didactic about my deconstruction. Like I
Yeah.
had these questions, but you're taught to revere and uphold scripture as infallible and absolute truth.
Yep.
So actually when I'm asked like what would you say is the first step of quote unquote deconstruction, if there is any like prescribed steps, which I don't
Yes.
think that there are, but like it's to like take your questions, write them down, and then start researching scripture from a non um theological way, like literally look up what books divinity schools are reading, look up what colleges are reading in their world religions classes or in their New Testament classes, their Old Testament classes, read the textbooks. That's
Yeah.
what I did. Because then you get this there you're like, "Oh, they just withheld so
So
much
much.
information." And
Yeah.
you can't really deconstruct, I don't think, your beliefs as like a Bible-based Christian unless you learn more about the Bible. Because
Exactly.
that was the relief for me. I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh." So even what oh my God. I'm so like my brain
Post-Christmas.
because of like post-Christmas and the sickness and whatever. But
Yeah.
um the sin, like that you're born with it. What is the word I'm looking for? It's a theological term. It'll come to me.
Original sin or
Original sin.
yes,
That's
there
not
you
even
go.
a hard word. Anyway, original sin isn't biblical. Like that's not a
Right.
Jesus teaching. That was a theological stance that came like 500 years later, like
Mhm.
things like that. And you're like, oh, or even the inception of Christianity. One could argue the very inception of Christianity was like anti-Semitic, right? And like,
Mhm.
what was the point of it? And why did we need to organize the church in this way? It couldn't possibly be for political influence and power. Is there a
What?
reason why all of the churches in Italy look like palaces? Probably because they were establishing a kingdom. It's
Right.
like that's the kind of stuff. And then you're like, oh, so,
Church
and
history
then,
is what cracked it open for me.
yeah,
I
yeah.
realized, oh, wait, penal substitutionary atonement is not the truth. It's a
Right.
theory. And it
Right.
wasn't even introduced until, what, 1,000 years after the church had already established. Like it, to
Mhm.
me, that is it. I was like, wait, I can question this. And then hell, reading about
Yeah.
hell and being like, oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
remember when I went, I am letting go of this. And
Mhm.
I was like, wait, is this the freedom that Christ set me free for? Is
Mhm.
this what it's talking about? Because I'm finally feeling freedom in
Free.
my faith. And I
Yeah.
do have faith. It's just
Yeah.
different. I don't have faith in a system or in
Right.
a set of beliefs. I have
Yeah.
faith that if there is a God, and I believe there is, I think it's not a man in the sky judging us. I think it's a consciousness that connects all of us and it's beautiful and it wants
Mhm.
good things for us. But if there is a God, it's a good God
Yeah.
and like wants good for
Not
us.
a
And I just
punitive petty
no,
God.
no, ready to throw us into hell if we believe wrong. You know what I
Right.
mean? Which
Like,
makes
why
no
would
sense.
you make this I say this, like, why would you make this incredibly vast, varied world and then
Yeah,
insist we all like the
judge it.
booby trap you set is we all have to become exactly the same?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, that's
Ew.
sadistic.
Yeah.
And like what? Yeah, it's and I also brought this up. So back to your question about my parents, I wasn't super vocal about it with my parents initially, which was
Mm.
also an interesting um coming of age thing where I
Yeah,
was like,
of
"Oh,
course.
I don't have to tell my parents everything. I'm an adult. I don't have to tell my mom about every date I go on. I don't have to tell my mom about that I'm having sex. I don't have to
Yeah.
do that."
Sometimes it's a protective thing too. Like just
Yeah.
protect them while you're going through your thing and figuring
Yeah.
yourself out. Yeah.
But then I started writing about my experience. Like I started God, Sex, and Rich People. That's the
Yeah.
title of the book, God, Sex, and Rich
Yay.
People, or Recovering the Evangelical Testimony. But I started writing it as a blog in 2015. And before Donald Trump,
Yeah.
before Me Too, before all of that. And it got really popular back home. My dad said people would literally like bring it up to him at the grocery store and
And
they're
you're
like,
like,
what do you think of Mattie? And but my dad would say, I think she's right about a lot because
wow.
I was calling out church hypocrisy.
Hmm.
And my parents have always been like, yes, there was lots of purity culture sprinkled in at home for sure. My mom had her fair share of like patriarchal shit that she put on us about how basically putting huge importance on being in a relationship and
Yeah.
the male gaze and all of these things, right? Fat phobia. I inherited a lot of that from her.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I will say that like at home we did learn a God of love and compassion and true grace, and a God who serves and seeks to reach the marginalized, in a faith of works and
Mm,
servitude. So that was the foundation I got. So even though church culture, though sort of masquerading as that, the nuance of it was a little messier, I still like that. Ultimately, I am like added to the list of things I can blame my parents for. They're the reason I deconstructed, because they gave me a real foundation of the faith that I wanted to live out. And then I realized, oh, that's not the faith
we're not
that
doing
I'm
that.
being
Yeah.
sold. Yeah. And
So
my
many people
dad,
say this.
yeah, and my dad felt the same. He got to a point where, I mean, he was in 2016, combined with all this stuff with Donald Trump, he was also
Mm,
really unfairly pushed out of our church that he had been part of for 15 years. Um, and so that all sort of culminated for my parents to, my dad left the ministry. He did another stopover in a church called Jesus Was Homeless. That was like a very service-based church. But after that, my mom was just like, Mark, we I can't do this anymore. Like, can we just, for the second half of our lives, can we just not with the ministry thing? My mom never wanted to be a preacher's wife. She actually gave my dad the ring back. She broke their engagement when he changed his major from business to biblical studies. Because she just
You're
didn't
like,
want that life. Yeah.
I don't play the piano. No.
Yeah, right, exactly. So then they sort of like came up with, my mom didn't do the typical preacher's wife stuff. And
Mhm.
so we were pretty atypical in that regard. And so I have been really fortunate that my parents have undergone a deconstruction of their own alongside pretty much
Yeah.
everyone in my family has. And I'm very grateful that I have a dad that is pretty academic about his reverence of the Bible. He
Mhm.
takes it seriously, which he will say, so does my daughter, which is
Yeah.
why she's pushing back.
Yes.
And so I'm very lucky in that regard.
Yeah, you are. So many people, their parents get afraid when they start.
Mhm,
I've even heard people, especially millennials, who are like, I can't even have a relationship with my parents anymore. They've
mhm,
pushed me away because they're trying to teach me a
mhm.
lesson. They're trying to
Right.
show me that I'm wrong by
Yeah.
withholding love, which to me didn't make a lot of sense until I realized, wait, that's the gospel they believe.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was gonna say. If your version of ultimate love is do everything I say or I'll
Or
punish you
else.
forever,
Yeah.
then of course they think that
Yeah.
that's how love is
Yeah.
demonstrated.
And it
Yeah.
makes complete sense to them. And I remember being told, because my son never really bought into the church thing. It was like he just kind of was enlightened from a very young age. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's just
Yeah.
very artistic and he never really fit, and
Mhm.
and I just remember thinking everybody was like, well, you just need to tough love, tough love. And I was like, I can't
Mhm.
do that.
Mhm.
And so he would come home and he'd be like, Mom, I make you cry. Maybe I shouldn't come home anymore. Cause I'd be like, please, you're going to go to hell. Like I was so afraid
Yeah.
for him. It was all coming from a place of love. And then
Mhm.
when he said, I'm not going to come home anymore because I don't want to hurt you, this is killing me. That's when I said, okay, I'm going to act as if he's already there. He's
Mhm.
already up here with me in the,
Mhm.
know it all phase.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I started treating him like that.
Ether. Yeah.
And when I treated him like that, I was like, wait, he is already here. Wait, maybe it was like the
Mhm.
kind of part of the process for me was
Yeah.
seeing my kids wrestling with the things that I was telling them were absolute truth. And my fear of them not believing it was so
Mhm.
strong.
Mhm.
So I'm thankful that your parents didn't have that. Like they were like, no, keep going. Like
Mhm.
search, do the thing,
Mhm.
take Jesus at his word, take the Bible seriously. Like, where did it
Mhm.
come from? Study where, history of the church.
Mhm.
What
Mhm.
a gift they gave you, Mattie Jo.
Yeah. Yeah, and, I will say, like, it's not been all, like, rainbows and butterflies,
No, of
like,
course not.
my dad and I definitely disagree on things, like,
Yeah, yeah.
like, I've told him multiple times I don't believe in hell, and I don't believe that I just and why I don't believe in hell, and
Yeah.
we've kind of gone back and forth on that, and
Giving you that
yeah,
permission to
yeah,
be yourself and have
yeah.
these disagreements. What were you getting ready to say? Sorry.
It comes down to respect. I think
Yes.
that's what really bothers me about a lot of these parents who disown their kids because lest they have a different opinion. I wrote a piece about this called The Fourth Commandment about my relationship with my parents, and I think a lot of parents. And again, it makes sense if you're indoctrinated within evangelicalism, because within evangelicalism, it's not about doing right, it's about being right.
Yes.
And so they're going to live that out. And again, the example of love and how what it means to demonstrate that is again about like self-righteousness. It's not really about love.
Mhm.
And but like I just felt respected by my parents. I felt like
Mhm.
they were like I felt as though they considered me intelligent. They empowered me to have opinions,
And living in
you
darkness,
know?
undeceived? What? What's that
Yes.
like?
Instead of belittling
Yeah.
my views and, and I don't know, I just can't understand. I think parents and Gen X, I think, is better about this than, well, my parents are like cuspy Gen X boomers, but I think they're actually like right on the cusp. But anyways, there's a humility that's lacking. And
Mhm.
again, it makes sense because as you age, it actually does get harder to change your mind about things. Your brain does become less malleable. Combine that with legalistic rhetoric you've been hearing your whole life that's masquerading as progressive
Truth.
Christianity,
Yeah, no,
and
yeah.
truth. Yeah, I understand
Well,
why
and
it
it's protecting.
happens.
They're
Mhm,
trying to protect their heart. They
mhm,
know that if I go down this road, because I know, I mean, I am a Gen Xer who has
mhm,
been through this process over the
mhm,
last 8, 9 years. And I will tell you, I knew when I stepped into it. I mean, I remember the day I was putting a
mhm,
puzzle together. I do that when I try to think better because of my ADD. And
mhm,
I remember saying, "You're doing this and it's going to
mhm.
suck." And like people don't want to have to go through something that sucks
Yeah,
intentionally.
yeah,
Like if
yeah,
you can just
yes,
pretend and do cognitive dissonance and just push it away just so you can feel safe. You know what I
right,
mean? Which
yep,
is so scary when you go, I'm
mhm,
pushing this away and I'm going to just rebuild. 100%.
yes,
It's like I knocked it all down so I could rebuild it in a way that made more sense to my heart, which I was starting
mhm,
to learn to trust.
right, yeah, in my book, I call it my rebel years. I feel like I had just, like, knocked everything down, and I was
Yeah.
just sitting on this atomic wasteland of my previous identity with no idea how to rebuild.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until like and I sat in the rebel years for like 3 years
Mhm.
before I started to intentionally learn how to rebuild.
Same.
Some friends combined with events that happened that led me to therapy and yeah, so it I say that as well in my book, like you just the thing that's hard about coming from our background is we just and I think it's just human nature, the need to proselytize, right?
Mhm.
Like evangelicals and people on like CrossFitters and keto dieters
Oh,
don't
yeah.
have that right? They all just want to tell you what you're doing wrong because
Right.
they've gotten it right. And it's
I
like,
know everything. I'm enlightened.
yes,
I am up here and you
yes.
are down here. And
And
I want you to be up here with me because we're
right.
amazing. Yeah.
And you just have to accept that that people just
Let
don't
people be.
care. And you just have to let people live. And that's
Yeah.
fine. And you'll actually live my brother says I quote him in the book saying you'll be tired for all the wrong reasons if you
Mhm.
insist everybody do things the exact way you'd like them to do it.
Yes. It's
And
exhausting.
it's
Such a
exhausting. So
good
you
quote.
just, I have friends who are missionaries. I have friends who are so deep in the Bible mommy blogger, and I think it's silly, but it's
Calm
fine.
down. Yeah. Yeah.
They are happy, and I
Yes.
don't think it and if they are happy, and I don't think they're bad people,
Right.
and so whatever, live your
Yeah.
dreams.
Live your dreams.
But that's
And
not
that
something
is
you grow up with in Christianity. It's like, "No, you must
no.
believe the way that I believe, and I will save you."
Yes, because the stakes are so high. You know what
Right,
I mean? And I
right.
think that's one thing I had to learn in deconstruction. I think initially I was evangelizing for
Mhm,
deconstruction. You know, I was like, oh, I don't know
mhm,
how to do anything else. And then I was like,
mhm,
ew, this is
mhm,
gross. And then you
mhm.
get into arguments with people and you're like, okay, I feel like I'm arguing with myself.
Yeah,
Everything they're saying is what I would say 5 years ago.
mhm,
You know what I mean? So it's like, oh my gosh, I can't do
right.
this. It, like you said,
Yeah,
it's just exhausting. And
right.
I literally was just talking to, I do another podcast called Beyond
Mhm,
the Torch, where we talk
Mhm.
with survivors, and we had a survivor winner, Tina Wesson from season 2. And she was talking about how the way she plays the game of survivor, and I love this as when it applies to not only survivor, but deconstruction, is like
Mhm.
she just lets people be who they are. Like if somebody
Yeah.
wants to be known as the leader, let them lead. You
Yeah.
know, if somebody wants to be known as the chef, let them cook. You know,
Yeah.
give them the freedom, and all of a sudden you realize there's harmony, you know,
Yeah.
and that's something that's very lacking in the world because we all want to change everybody to be like exactly who we are.
Right. Which is, to me, the the crux of the actual definition of the spirit versus the flesh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being human is a yin and yang. This is not new information. Sin and sanctification has been around for forever. Pretty much, I mean, probably since we could since we could speak.
Yeah.
Like humans are so complicated and messy, and we have the capacity to be the Dalai Lama, and we have the
Mhm.
capacity to be Hitler. That's wild that you could
Yeah.
have such extremes in one species. And the thing is, we all have that within ourselves, which is why it's so important to get really comfortable with all sides of yourself. But
Yeah.
sin, to me, is not this litany of moral behaviors. Sin can be the exact same behavior in different context. So
Mhm.
sin can, for example, let's get political briefly. When Charlie Kirk was shot,
Yeah.
I was like, my immediate reaction was like, that is poetic justice, my guy. And I did not feel bad for him at
Yeah.
all. I was like, mm. And then kind of got into a fight with my partner over the issue, because he was like, he pointed out to me that is so dangerous, what you just said, because
Mhm.
you are not seeing his humanity.
Humanity.
You disagreed with him, and therefore you think it's okay that someone murdered him.
Mm.
And I had to really wrestle with that. Like, yeah, it is a slippery slope of
Yeah.
self-righteousness. If you cannot zoom out and step outside of yourself and say and honor the fact that, like, I have just as much, because that kind of feeling is what leads to killing people who disagree with you. That
Yeah.
kind of feeling is what led to him being murdered,
Murdered.
and
Yeah.
vice versa, right? Like,
Mhm.
whatever side you're on, when Brene Brown talks about this, when you dehumanize, that is so powerful, which is
Yeah.
why obviously Trump's rhetoric and all of, right? It's like it's so powerful because you can dehumanize another person, which is why the message of Jesus, love your enemies, is the answer to sin and sanctification.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so simple, actually. Like, the messages of Jesus, obviously it's complex and complicated, and it's not super straightforward, but some of them are. The golden rule, love your enemies. I really think these speak to the messiness of our humanity, and they are what fix it.
Yeah.
And let them be, right? Like, just
Right.
it creates harmony instead
Well,
of
that's what
friction.
Jesus did on the cross. I mean, he literally forgave them because
Yes,
he knew, oh, they don't know what they're doing. They don't
that's
get
it.
it.
That's
And like
exactly
he
the
showed
example
us
I
the
gave.
template.
Yeah.
He showed us the template of this is how you defeat sin. It's not
Yeah.
about believing something, a doctrine, and then all of a sudden,
Mhm.
boop, you're a Christian. It's about,
Mhm.
no, just recognizing that you're already there. Like Jesus said,
Yeah.
the kingdom of God is within you. It's already
Mhm.
here. And,
Mhm.
you're looking up here for it and it's already here. Like when
Mhm.
you believe that, I feel like then you start to see the humanity in other people and you
Mhm.
stop the sin cycle, which
Right.
is negative and judging and compartmentalizing people. And I mean, immediately, like, I hate it, I still do it. Like
Mhm.
when you said
Mhm.
my dad was a Methodist minister, I was like, oh, like I
Yeah.
knew how to judge that, and I was like, ew, gross, stop it.
Yeah.
But like these things are so embedded in us,
Mhm, mhm,
it's so
mhm.
hard.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I made a reel that I never posted, because I have such a complicated relationship with social media since, like,
Yeah.
viral culture. But, anyway, I gave that point. I was like, Jesus on the cross forgave his murderers.
Mhm.
Like, we talk about how Christ was sacrificed. He was murdered,
Yes, he was.
brutally murdered.
By two
These
systems that wanted to control people, political and religious.
like double whammy.
Mhm.
And he was up there saying, I
Yeah.
forgive them, Lord, forgive them. They know not what they're doing. You know, like that is the kind of grace. And I think even, I look at that within family dynamics too,
Mm.
is can you just, and I get it, it's hard. It's hard when there's like so much racism and there's so much there's harmful things at play
Yeah.
here. And I'm in a position of privilege because I'm like small, cute, a female in
Yeah.
terms of white, right? Like in terms of these things maybe affect me because I'm female, but I'm not so many other identities that feel this much more intensely on the daily.
Mhm.
So I do recognize that maybe this is just, but this is me being in a place of privilege, perhaps. But
Mhm.
I think even talking to family members and just going, you know what? Instead of slandering them and being mad at them and being angry and vilifying them, going, this is their lived experience.
Yeah.
Can I hear more about that? I'd love to chat with you more about that. And, so you think this equal, and like actually talking
Mm.
instead of immediately going to throwing whatever label we want to throw on them that makes them wrong.
And
This was all
listening.
very tangential, but
No, I love this. I mean, you're so right. And I think coming off of the holiday season,
Mhm,
I think we
mhm.
can all like maybe even picture in our minds a conversation we may have recently had
Yeah,
that
right.
where we had to sort of go, you know what? And I'm learning, I'm taking a non-religious spiritual director course with Jim
Mhm,
Palmer and Britt Hartley.
mhm,
It's amazing. And I'm
mhm,
learning so much. But one of the things I'm learning that has been such an eye opener for me is how incredibly tender belief systems, they're very fragile even though they feel
mhm,
strong. They're fragile, and the minute that somebody feels like you are coming up against their belief, they take
mhm,
it very personally, and it can turn into an existential crisis. This can be
yeah,
nihilism, this can lead to
mhm,
a spiral, a mental health crisis. And I don't think I ever realized how important it is that we just show up and answer
mhm.
questions.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
yeah.
just if they ask, tell you don't have to unindoctrinate people in a heartbeat. You've
Mhm,
gotta respect the timing because it's
mhm,
a very tender thing.
mhm,
And,
mhm,
I think I don't know, I feel like you've done a really good job of that. Even though
mhm,
your process has been intense and revelatory, you've been
mhm,
so tender about, okay, my parents aren't there yet, so I'm gonna be careful with that. And
mhm,
these people don't see this yet, so I'm gonna maybe keep that to my side. But
mhm,
how did you
mhm.
learn to do that? And as a millennial, I'm so impressed.
Yeah. Well, it certainly wasn't like that right off the
Yeah.
bat for sure, and
Yeah.
I almost felt like I was under way just so much scrutiny in the
Mm.
beginning because so many of my friends were getting married and they were doing it all right, and
Yeah.
they hadn't yet had any experience to prove that maybe they hadn't done it right, and maybe I'm
Mm.
on to something here of like actually dating other people before you get married. um and so I wasn't always so graceful because I was retaliatory and pushed back on feeling like I was getting slut shamed, and
Mm.
um but I think as I as things just continued to get more and more intense with the onset of Donald Trump's rise to political fame, and I was just like, This is not working. This anger, this what's the point posting things
Yeah.
on
It just upsets people.
Instagram and Facebook, and it's just you're not getting the full picture, you're getting a square, you're getting a snippet. I mean, that's one of my biggest issues with social media is you are getting it's short form. This is the reason I wrote a book. Like, I want
Yeah.
the full story. I want the nuance. I don't want it to just be a 30-second clip that you can then interrogate and I posted something the other day about capitalism just being a system that you can use for good or for bad. And someone said something like, so you think capitalism or you think slavery is okay? And I was like, You
Yeah.
know, it's just stuff like that that I'm just like, so I just thought this doesn't work. This isn't working. It's creating way more harm than harmony.
Mm.
And if we're ever going to get anywhere, we're going to have to be able to freaking talk to each other.
And
So
listen.
yeah, and listen. And so I think
Yeah.
it was just more and more living and it seeing that this issue wasn't going away and it's actually just keeps getting worse and worse.
And it's okay if you're talking to somebody and you don't agree with what they're saying. If
Mhm.
it's working for them, I feel like that's the one thing I'm learning too is like, if that's working for you, I'm happy for you. Just do
Yeah.
no harm. You know, like
Yeah.
it's, and that's the beauty of, I think, the space that we're both in right now is we're like learning to go, oh, wait, the anger is not really, for one thing, it feels weird to me. It's not really who
Mhm.
I am to be angry.
Mhm.
I hated
Same.
the anger phase of the grief and
Right.
deconstruction.
Right.
I
Right.
hated it. Now, I loved it in the moment. I learned a
Right.
bunch of really colorful words that I didn't
Yes.
say for a long time. Yeah, it was something, but
In
but
theater, we call those fricatives, and they feel really nice to say, which is why curse words have such hard consonants.
but I found myself, when I was the angriest was when I was in my car, like road rage all of a sudden. My kids were
Mhm.
like, "What the heck is going on with mom?" Nobody wanted to get in
Mhm.
the car with me. And it was
Yeah.
usually only when one of my kids or my family, if somebody was in
Mhm.
the car with me and I'm driving, people are cutting me off, I immediately went into, they are so selfish and they
Mhm.
are not considering my family. It was like anger, but I think it was
Mhm.
misplaced. This person
Yeah.
had no idea what they were doing to me. And here I was like, they're
Right.
intentionally cutting me off because they don't think I matter.
Yes.
Asshole. You know what I mean? And now I'm just like, oh, that came from, because that's how I felt like I didn't matter. My
Mhm.
opinions, my thoughts, my belief, none of it mattered unless it lined up with everything I was taught to believe
Mhm.
and think
Mhm.
and do. And that was really, really hard. But I
Mhm.
got through the anger phase. Thank God.
Yeah, I was in the yes, it's the stages of grief. That's what I tell people. Like
100%.
deconstruction is really just the stages of grief.
Yeah, I
You
know.
eventually get to acceptance.
You do.
You're just
You're like, oh yeah, that sucked. But
yeah, yeah.
well, let's talk about your book a little bit because
Okay.
I love the way you write.
Thank
I
you.
didn't get to read the whole thing. Golly, I wish I did because it was so good. But like the parts that I read were just so, it was like you peeled back all pretense, something that
Mhm.
you probably had to really focus and do. I'm sure that was hard for you
Mhm.
initially, trying to be as raw and real. Would you do the honor of maybe reading something from your book, like just a little passage or one that really
Yeah.
resonates, one that you can't wait to share with my listeners so that they'll go out and get your book and support you and hear your journey?
Yes. I will say actually though, I I don't have a hard time peeling back and just going straight for the jugular.
God, I'm so
I
proud of you.
actually I
I
actually
do.
have I'm annoyed with writers trying to write
Mm,
where it's like, this is what I think a writer would sound like. And
yeah,
I'm just kind of like, I, I know my writing style is unrefined, but it is intentional and it's pointed and
yeah,
it's direct. And it is still, I would say, if I toot my own horn, artful in I am thinking about the syllables. I'm a singer, right? So I'm thinking about the rhythm. I'm thinking about how a joke lands because I know that can literally come down to God, sex, and rich people is the punchline. You're not expecting it. So I intentional, but I'm not trying to be flowery.
right, yeah,
And
yeah.
I hope that that is
Your
refreshing.
intention isn't to not offend. Your intention is to
Yeah.
be real. And I think that
Right.
I sometimes am so afraid to offend. I'm still trying to work that through myself. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
But anyway,
Yeah.
there's
And I
there's room
think
for all of us.
right. All of us at the table. Okay, let's see. So, this is from the chapter called The Bitter End. You'll have to read the
Okay.
book to know why it's titled that. So in a split second, I went from saving myself until marriage to losing my virginity to a stranger I didn't even like that much. My necessary pendulum was swinging hard. I expected there to be a lot of pain and blood at first. And then once we got past that, we would have beautiful, pleasureful sex till the wee hours of the morning. Because I am a spectacular actor, I would make it through the whole experience without Pop Singer ever knowing he was my first time. Unless the blood gave it away. But maybe I'll just tell him I'm at the end of my period. And then I'd leave immediately and ask God for forgiveness. That is not what happened. What happened was I barely felt a thing, and the entire endeavor was complete in around 3 minutes and 12 thrusts. As I lay there after having participated in what I was told would be the pinnacle of my existence as a woman, I expected to have all kinds of existential dread and immediately start praying for forgiveness. I've heard of women in similar situations getting hives and being rushed to the ER for some unexplained penetration PSD response. But much to my own surprise, I was not thinking about God, getting into heaven, or enduring PTSD at all. Instead, I just lay there, thrusted into, thinking, what if I had married this?
Oof. Ooh. Ew. What a sad way to be, I don't know, deflowered. Or what if you call it something else? What do you call it?
I don't remember.
We don't
By
call
the
it
end of the book, I say
virginity, like your sexual debut or something.
yeah, sexual debut, or I like at the end of I talk about giving or
Yeah.
giving someone your virginity instead of losing it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, this is a gift, motherfucker. Like, how dare you? Sorry, I'm such a
You're
potty
good.
mouth. But
You're fine. You're fine.
anyway, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Because that's something that they never what was the message in church? If you
Yeah.
wait until if you both love the Lord, everything will just work out. We
Mhm.
never heard about anatomical compatibility. All we
Mm-mm.
ever heard was, it won't be you will have to learn, you'll have to get better at it, whatever. But I'm like, there's only so much you can do if your bodies just don't work together.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's only so much. We never heard that, which I was like, oh, makes sense. Probably all those pastors had tiny dicks, and they didn't want any of us to know that that was a possibility. And so, anyway, I went back and forth with my editor about that part because she was like, Mattie Jo, you can't just body shame the men. I was like, okay, I'll take some words out and I'll just hint at it.
We'll try to protect their ego
Yeah,
as usual.
right.
No,
And
that's
I don't want to,
no,
you
I know.
can't help that, right? Like, you
No.
genuinely, but some bodies work together and some don't. And that is
Right.
okay.
It's
But we
okay.
never heard that. Never heard that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And, in like my daughter's case, she was on a few episodes ago. She waited. She did everything they told her to do. She checked all the boxes, Mattie Jo. She did it all right, waited for marriage, and that marriage did not work out. And
Yeah.
it was devastating for her. Like it was devastating. And seeing her go through that and hearing all the promises, if you do it right and if you do it this way. And she did it all. Check, check, check. And then boom, did not
Yeah.
work out.
Yeah.
And seeing that as a mom who raised her and was so proud of her. I used to talk about her on Christian radio about how she was writing letters to her future husband. Like it was gross what I did.
Yeah.
And I hate it. And I'm so sad, but I'm also, very, and this is how I feel like repentance is. It's changing your mind. It's like going, oh, maybe I was wrong. It's
Yeah.
not, I'm a big
Absolutely.
fat sinner and I need all the salvation. No, that's not repentance.
Right.
Repentance is going, oh, wow, I may have gotten that wrong. And I've been kind of a repenter since I've been
Yeah.
deconstructing.
But but you're absolutely right. Again, it's not moral failure, self-flagellation. That is not
No,
repentance.
no.
Repentance is admitting, being humble enough, I got this wrong, and
Yeah.
I am gonna do better moving
Yeah.
forward.
Oh,
Yeah, I think and that's so powerful, especially kids from their parents. That's really powerful. It's just admitting, yeah, I did not get this one right.
yeah. Well, my kids hear that a lot.
Yeah.
And I think I was really hard on myself for so long. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I would cry and they'd be like, Mom, your heart was always in the right place. Chill out. You're fine. We love you. You love us. You did it because you thought it was real. Like, don't beat yourself up. Like, they're the ones that help me to
Yeah.
go, it's going to be okay. They're way more mature than I ever was at their age. So.
Yeah, right. I know. I think I was on a podcast where this woman who did wait until marriage, she was interviewing me and asking, like, do you think there's a case for waiting until marriage? Like, you think no matter what,
Yeah.
it's a bad idea? And I was like, I mean, no, like, I guess for some people it is the right choice and it,
Yeah,
it like works out for them. My dad is very open about the fact that my mom's the only partner he's ever had. And it works. But it's not reality.
right,
And you can't make people like, I'm not saying there are not harmful things about hookup culture. Of course there are,
right.
but it's just a little silly to make people feel like they should be punished or that they're less valuable if they don't center their entire existence around having sex, which
Yeah,
is essentially what waiting until marriage does, which is what I
yeah.
figured out. I was like, "Oh, my entire life is just about having sex because I want to be married so that I can have sex."
Well,
And
and I
that's
feel
not a good
like,
reason to
yeah.
get married.
No, and it does
Yeah.
it puts people in a position, and I honestly think my daughter, in a way, maybe that was part of her journey was,
I think for a lot of
oh,
people it is, yeah.
and man, it just like I don't know. To me, it just doesn't it
Mhm,
doesn't mesh anymore. But listen,
mhm,
if somebody feels if they make that decision out of this is what I want, not this is
mhm,
what I need to do in order to be fill in the blank. You know what I
mhm,
mean? If
mhm,
that's why they're doing it, that's different.
mhm.
But if it's because there's a pressure to
Yeah,
belong or to fit in or to be a good Christian or to be, that's the part that I struggle with because that takes
yeah,
away autonomy and
right.
and the ability to make a choice for yourself. Well, I want to
Mhm.
talk a little bit before we go because I want to be
Okay,
respectful of your time.
yeah.
Tell me about the rich people part because you're right. That was kind of like the punchline. Like, what the heck?
Yeah,
Where did that come
where's the
from?
rich people? Well, okay, so I will just say this, and then I will leave some things to be
The imagination.
discovered
Yes.
upon reading the book.
Yeah.
I will say that my identity crisis happened while living with and working for uber wealthy people. So rich people were this very strange and unexpected container for my identity crisis. So that's why I just think it's I was living with wealthy people, I was working for wealthy people. So there could not have been one more layer of culture shock because I was coming from being in rural Missouri to a penthouse apartment on the Upper West Side, living with this guy whose dad owned the building, like, that whole echelon world, and even learning like the nuance of in my mind, like this apartment was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm living in this rich person's apartment. But then I was working for people who had even more money and seeing the way that things played out in their lives and how and that culture, I was just like, oh my gosh. And I say things like, don't bother asking yourself why women who have no jobs need so much help managing their lives and why kids who have all the resources in the world have zero life skills. Just
Mhm.
show up. Every rich person needs an emotional support Midwesterner. Take the money and run. That's kind of what I've adopted because I still work.
You
I
were a
have worked.
novelty.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And they just like they couldn't and it was honestly like so surprising. I was like, wow, like there's a whole industry of money making in New York City. It's very lucrative to be raised to be a mom. That was a huge benefit of mine growing up in the Midwest because these people were not raised to be moms. And in fact, they were terrible moms. So
There's
I'm
people that
glad
raise
they
their
have
kids for them.
me,
Yeah.
and that's not everyone, and I do
No.
talk about that in the book. I have been so, 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 so fortunate to meet incredibly generous, wonderful, wealthy people. That's another thing is like in media, wealthy people are vilified. Like,
Right.
but when are they ever humanized? They're
Mhm.
they're it's they're like cartoon characters all the time. And so I was like, I met so many wonderful, amazing people who have become a really important part of my community here. And I still work as a nanny.
Oh, fun.
And I have worked for, like, I call them like working class rich people.
Yeah.
And then I've worked for like ridiculously wealthy people. So I've
Right.
really seen the gamut. I stopped writing about rich people as much in my blog because it was the way that I made my living and I didn't
Right.
want
Yeah. Defend.
and
Yeah.
that's become more important now. I am developing a TV show and a one woman show and I mean, I even held back in my book a lot. I didn't talk a lot as much about things that I probably could have. But in the TV show, it's all inspired by. So it's not like it's not directly memoir. So
Yeah, yeah.
we're definitely, I call it like the culture is like Bridgerton, less fabric. It is like if you watch Bridgerton, if you watch The Gilded Age, it truly is copy paste for modernity. The way
Mm,
that this culture operates, and it's just that now rich people don't want you to know they're rich. So like they will walk about the streets like everybody else in their Old Navy, but that doesn't mean they don't have multiple $50 million properties.
right,
And
right.
whereas back then they really wanted there to be a very clear distinction
Yeah.
of status. And now there's I always say, like, if someone's rocking head to toe Chanel, they're not that rich.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Donald Trump talking about how rich he is. He's not that rich,
No,
you
no.
know,
So the
because
housewives you're talking about, like
yeah.
the
Oh,
the franchise, the ones that
yeah.
wear like Coach everything and
Yeah. Yes. And see, Coach, no, forget it. If you don't have a Goyard bag, a diaper bag, you're not wealthy.
yeah,
Okay. So that's me, even like I see like, oh, Coach or whatever. And I know those thoughts are expensive.
yeah, yeah.
They've got nothing on
Nothing. See, for
whatever.
me, a Coach is even unattainable. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely
Oh,
not in
same.
that category. But I will
I'm
say,
like,
this is so interesting, Mattie Jo, because like
yeah.
what you saw when you went to New York was not just this culture of quote sinners. It was
Mhm.
also a different, you're like, whoa, and there's this other layer of culture. And there's other, you've seen so many different things that I
Mhm.
think it's helping you see that somebody's reality and their culture and their life experience will absolutely shape how they show up in the world.
100%. I say that my first apartment in New York had more diversity than all of Missouri. I lived with a born and raised Jewish Upper West Side kid who went to like the best private schools in America. His dad, like, threatened not to give him the penthouse of the apartment building if he didn't go to law school. He doesn't
Oh my
practice
gosh.
law, but he just had to go to law school. I'm like, who just gives their kid a law degree? Like, what? And then the other woman was born and raised between India and New York. And then the other woman was Scandinavian. She was from Sweden and she
Wow.
was like an economist.
So you can
And
see how easy it is. Like
yeah.
when you're in Missouri and you're surrounded by Bible Belt people who like believe everything the way you believe it. And it was kind of like that for me when I left or when I went away from my Bible Belt
Hmm.
Christian bubble to
Hmm.
Survivor and saw
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
smorgasbord of beliefs and ways of life. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
They're all in darkness. But then I
Right.
realized, why is there so much light coming out of them if they're living in darkness? Started
Hmm.
asking questions. I'm sure that like made
Hmm.
your deconstruction process probably exponentially faster by
Oh
being in
yeah, I
that.
mean, and I talk about that with my a big character in the book is Colin, my roommate, whose father owned the building, yada yada. There's a lot in there. I talk about like how I dated my doorman, like, and that was a whole saga. So yeah, rich people were this really fun little addition.
I
But
love it.
he and I would stay up talking about like theological things, and there's a chapter called Christmas Jews where Colin's being so grumpy about Christmas, and I'm like, what is wrong with you? And he explains like not everybody celebrates Christmas and we're all just subjugated to like 4 months of this shit. He goes, I went to Starbucks today and they handed me a cup with fucking bows on it. I said, excuse me, can I have a big boy cup, please? On this like rampage about how annoying Christmas is. He's like, every restaurant you go into is playing the same 12 songs.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah,
I had
exactly.
never even considered, because I
Yeah.
love Christmas.
Same,
I had
yeah.
never even considered like, oh, some people don't have this tradition in their family and they just like have to exist through it.
What? What is this
Yeah.
madness?
Yeah.
No, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Well, you have been such a delight. Thank you for
Oh,
sharing your
thank
journey
you.
so openly and honestly and authentically. And I will put a link to buy your book, God, Sex, and Rich People.
Yes.
And make sure if you read it, guys, make sure you leave her a review. That's exactly
Yes,
how the
please.
books grow, especially on
Mhm.
Amazon. And is it in audio yet or at all?
No,
Oh,
it's
sorry.
close. It should be ready. I am so hopeful that it will
Okay.
be out before. I have a big event coming up in New York, a big literary event I'm doing with a couple of other authors. and March 8th. And I
Okay.
am like,
That's
I
coming.
really hope that it is out by March 8th. It's just been a really long, drawn out
Yeah,
process
that's
because
a
I've
tough
run
one.
into a bunch of hiccups with it, but fingers
Yeah.
crossed.
Yeah, when I wrote my book, I was like, I want this to be read in my voice, just because
Yes.
my voice is the one that shared other things for so long, and I
Mhm,
need to
mhm.
kind of redeem that voice a
Yes,
little bit.
reclaim.
And yeah,
Yeah.
and so I did. But
Yes.
because of that, I was able to have a little more control, I think, over
Mhm.
getting it, quick. But those audiobooks, I live by them. It's what I
It's
do when I
yeah,
put a puzzle together, take a walk, do dishes, whatever. I have somebody telling me their
I
life
know.
story in my ear, and I love it. So
Yes.
anyway, I'll be one of the first ones to get it.
Okay, great.
So yes,
Thank you so
just
much.
will you let me know when it comes out? Because I would
Yes,
love
I will.
that.
I'll make a big announcement. I'll send you an email. Yeah, it's just been such a long, drawn out process because I've had to call in a lot of favors for it,
No, listen, it'll be worth
so
the wait. It'll be
yeah,
worth it.
yes,
And then we'll
for
have a
sure.
big party and we'll like announce it and I'll let the
Yes.
listeners know. So no
Awesome.
worries.
Thank
But
you so much.
Mattie Jo, thank you so much for being here. And it was just such an honor to have you here and honor your journey.
Thank
And
you.
is there anything else you want to say before you go?
Um,
I'm putting you on the
yeah,
spot.
just no, please buy the book. Follow me of all my adventures on Instagram. I also work really hard on my website, and it has all of my podcasts and all of my interviews and all of my articles on there.
What's your
And
website?
just MattieJoCowsert.com.
Okay.
And also, if there is a bookstore, a local bookstore that you really like, please request my book because then we can support local bookstores as well. And I have like a myriad of local bookstores that have my book currently, so you don't have to go through Amazon. So yeah, that's what I
Perfect.
would say. And review. If you love it, review it. If you don't
Yes,
love
so
it,
important. Just keep
just
your mouth shut.
keep your mouth shut. Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you,
Yes.
dear. And you have an amazing 2026. I can't wait to
You as
see
well.
everything that comes about from all the things that you've got your little hands in right now. So
Thank you so much.